One of the scariest things that happened to me as a kid. Story time. This is why I tell parents to watch who you bring around your kids, because you never know what someone is capable of. So when I was a kid, we had a next door neighbor who went to school with my older siblings, so we all knew each other. When he was over 18, already out of school, he would come down and hang out, work on cars, drink, and stuff like that. He wasn't a big loudmouth like the other guys. He was more quiet, laid back. So after so many years of all of us knowing each other, we're basically family, and we trust him. So I'm sitting on the couch, and I see him standing at the door, and then he walks into the kitchen like he always did. We just start talking. So he sits down in the recliner, which is across from me, and we're watching TV, and about 5-10 minutes goes by, and then he stands up. He just stands there for a couple seconds. Well, next thing I know, he pulls out this big-ass knife out of his pocket and said, "Look, I found this." And I'm like, "Oh, that's a cool knife, man." And it was a really nice knife. And then he looked me in my eyes and said, "Look how sharp this is. You know what? If I was to stab you with this, nobody would even know it was me." So of course I start laughing because I think he's joking. The man has never disrespected me before, so I don't think he's serious. Then he takes a step towards me and says, "No, for real, I could stab you to death right now and nobody would even know it was me." And he's holding the knife in his right hand, like pointing it at me. And then he took a step towards me, and that was when I stood up. And when I tell you my blood went cold, because he never had said anything like that to me before. And there was a look in his eyes. His eyes just looked crazy, like he was gone. There was nobody home. So the only thing I could think to do was call out Brittany's name and pretend like she was there. I said, "Hey, Brittany, come out here and look at this knife that B's got. Like, you'll like it. Come check it out." As soon as I started calling her name, he was like, "Oh, well, Brittany's here?" And I said, "Yeah, she's back in the bedroom. She's been here the whole time. Come on, Brittany, come on." I start calling her again. He takes off to his truck and he leaves. Time he got off that damn porch, I was slamming that door shut and locking it because I just knew he was not playing. I'm telling you right now, it wasn't a joke. That man was not laughing when he said it. And I truly believe, had I not called out my best friend's name and pretending like she was there, that man probably would have stabbed me to death. And this the same guy who got kittens off the top of the house. The same dude who I saw stop his car and get turtles off the highway so they wouldn't get hit. And what's wild is he never got married, never had a girlfriend, never had kids, nothing. He died about 10 years after this happened. And for some reason, I was too scared to tell anyone. I never told a soul up until now. Now, as an adult, I know I should have told them immediately, but as a teenager, I was scared that I was going to get in trouble for some reason. I don't know why. But from that point forward, it really showed me that you don't know people. And the ones you think are your best friends, neighbors, family, or whatever, you don't know what they're capable of, and you don't know what's going on in their mind. So if you have kids, watch who you bring around them, but most importantly, talk to your kids. Educate them about these situations.
When I first heard this story, it gave me literal goosebumps, so of course I had to save it because I have to share it with you because I love you so much. So this guy is a taxi driver and he receives a call around 8 p.m. to go pick up a girl that is needing his services. They gave him the directions of where he's gonna wait for her, so he gets there and realizes that this area is a really bad area. People have been robbed there, there's criminal activity, so obviously he's waiting, but he knows that he needs to leave right away. He was also really nervous because the street that he had parked in was just really alone. Like, he was scared that somebody was gonna try to rob him. When he finally sees the girl walking towards the taxi, he realizes that she's coming through one of the alleyways. He also notices that next to her was like a small kid because the kid looked really short. The girl seemed to be like in her 20s, and he could tell that the little short kid next to her might have been like 10 years old. He sees when both of them approach the car, and it was really dark, but for some reason only the girl gets into the taxi. At this point, he turns to the lady and he's like, "Oh, good evening, ma'am. Are you ready to go? Is the kid gonna come with you?" She responds to the taxi man, "Oh, good evening. No. Why do you ask?" The taxi guy's like, "Oh, I thought I saw you walking with like a small kid. I was just asking because I didn't want to leave him behind if he was gonna get in the taxi with you." So as he's saying this, he's looking out of the taxi and he's like, "Actually, I don't even see the little kid anymore." So she's like, "Sir, excuse me, but I was walking alone. There was nobody with me that was coming towards the taxi. How did the little boy look, the one that was walking with me?" So the taxi's like, "I never told this lady that it was a little boy. All I said was it was a kid because I could only see how short it was. I never mentioned a boy with her." So he tells her, "Honestly, I don't know if it was a boy. I just saw like a short kid walking next to you towards the taxi." He starts describing what he saw because again, it was really dark. So he's like, "Well, I could tell that they had curly hair. I could tell that they had shorts on. I could tell that they had like tennies." So when he described this to her, she immediately is like, "Can we go? Can we leave? I just need to get out of here. This isn't the first time that somebody tells me that there's a kid walking next to me." So she starts saying that there's been different times where people are like, "Who is the kid next to you? Who is that boy next to you?" So she's like, "Did you see the little kid's face at all?" And he was like, "No, I could only see the silhouette because again, it was really dark." She tells him that the people who have told her that have seen this kid, it's only happening to her at nighttime, and that they describe this kid's face as really, really ugly, and it actually scares the people and it makes them go up to her and be like, who was this kid? Oh, I got chills, because that's not even the end of it. Apparently these people who see her like at night and he's next to her tell her that when the kid looks at them, that he makes faces at them. Like, to top it off, the kid's face is scary, they're already scared, and then he makes faces at them. She always thought it was a joke because it was always coming from her friends, from people that she knew in the street that like she lives on. She just thought that they were trying to scare her. She never really believed it until this night, because a random ass taxi driver that she does not know is telling her that there was a kid walking next to her. And again, she was completely alone. I think the upside, she's not seeing the kid and everybody else is. That's the only upside that I see to this. She ends up telling the taxi driver, I feel so bad because all of my friends are telling me, all the people that live on my street tell me too. And I'm always like, okay, you guys are lying, you're pranking me, you're scaring me. But like, now it is very much real. But what do you guys think?
Have you ever been out in the woods at night and you felt like something was just straight up following you? I hear a lot about these cryptids and like skinwalkers and all of that. And you know, they take place out in Utah, the Appalachian Mountains. This story takes place in the Catskills of New York. Me and my family, we had 22 acres up in the Catskills of New York. So we all grew up motocrossing. So we would go there every weekend to race quads and dirt bikes. Our family was very close. So we would all, even though we were only 14, we would sit around, we would have drinks with our parents, and then we would go on what we would call either spook walks or fun drinking quad rides. Mind you, this was 22 acres out in the middle of the mountains in the middle of the night. There's nothing scarier than when you're on the back of a quad because someone else is driving and you look behind you at nighttime and you only see as far as the red brake lights glow. We're all riding around racing, following each other, going up these dangerous hills. And you would think with the quads being so loud that you wouldn't be able to hear something running alongside of you. Turns out that's not true. I just felt that there was like this presence and I could have sworn I heard just thump, 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 like something really heavy running alongside of the quads. We were only going about 8 miles an hour up a hill. I specifically remember just hitting my sister on the back, just going, drive, there's something next to us. As we're driving up this hill, she goes a little faster. We both look next to us. There's nothing there, but I do turn around, and what I saw in the brake lights traumatized me till this day. Not only did this thing sound really heavy, but as we were driving, when I looked back, it literally looked like it was a person, but like a large person with like longer arms, like running on all fours, and like I could only really see the top of its head because it was bent over, and I just seen its like arms like kind of scratching at the ground as it was running behind us. At that time, I am screaming because I was only like 13 or 14 years old, just punching my sister in the back to drive faster to get back up to the cabin. Obviously, we get back up to the cabin and we tell our parents, my dad being like, oh, it's Bigfoot, you know, whatever. I don't know. I have no idea what it was to this day. But you guys tell me what you think down in the comments. And if you have any experiences with something like that out in the woods, just let me know down in the comments because I would love to read them and follow for more insane stories in my life.
Story that I will be sharing, it will be about this on the screen. Now, if this is not the kind of story you want to hear, please keep scrolling. I have other stories that have been shared with me that I have posted about, so let's get into it. As always, I will be changing people's names for privacy reasons. Now, Isabel states that she lived in the Dominican Republic in the late 1960s. She lived in the countryside with her parents and her siblings. She said that her house was made out of blocks and cement and steel. That her house was built this way just to fight against any hurricanes or storms that would come their way. And most people in their community, their houses were built that way as well. So this was a very common thing, and apparently it's a still common thing today. Is that at night it would really freak her out to go to sleep because she would hear someone walking outside her window, and then she would hear pacing in her room. Now, she states that she shared her room with the rest of her siblings since they only had a 2-bedroom home. But the thing is that she would hear the pacing not from the floor, but from the roof, as if someone was walking on the roof. She said it was impossible for someone to be walking on the roof since the roof was slightly slanted. Not only that, but the sound was coming from the inside of the house, not the outside. So she couldn't understand where this sound was coming from. So of course, her being the oldest and always communicating with her parents what was going on at night, they just told her, there's nothing to be concerned about. There's nothing for you to worry about. Those are our ancestors protecting us at night to make sure that no one harms us. Now, of course, her being 12 years old, she says, our ancestors? And her father told her, yes, our ancestors. And he Explain to her that she may hear words that she may not understand that are not Spanish and that are Arawak, which is the Taino language that her ancestors used to speak before being colonized. He said, if you hear certain words, that's our people protecting us. So do not be afraid. Comfort in knowing that her ancestors were there protecting the home at night. So she said she started to sleep more peacefully at night, knowing that she will be protected. It says during the day, it was a whole nother thing going on in that house. At that time, it was very common for the neighbors to come over, her godparents to come over. There would be an influctuation of traffic of people in and out her house since everyone shared the same resources with each other. So if, for example, if the neighbor was short on sugar, her mother would let the person borrow sugar. If they were short on rice, the neighbor would let them borrow rice and vice versa. Now, this particular day, her mom had sent her out to her godparents' house to get a cup of sugar because they were short. Now, when she got to her godparents' house, Isabel went with her sister, her little sister, who at the time was 8 years old. When she got there, she realized that no one was home except her godfather. And as he let her in, she felt this eerie feeling that something was completely off. But he left her and let her and her sister walk into the house. Onto the back, she says, to go get the cup of sugar for her and her sister. She started feeling this inkling feeling that she should not be inside that house. But she shook it off because this was her godfather and she should feel safe with someone that she's known her whole entire life. As he's handing her the cup of sugar, he asks her to sit down. And she says, well, we need to go because my mom is waiting for me. And he says, well, give me some time. I'm sure your mom won't mind. And she says, okay. And as she's sitting down, she says that her godfather did not hesitate, did not wait. He began. Trigger warning, it's about to get a little bit graphic, so if you cannot handle this on the screen, please scroll. And to take her clothes off, and she, of course, questioned him as to what he was doing, and he told her to be quiet. Now, mind you, she's 12 years old, so she's trying to push this person off of her, which is her godfather, trying to push him off. Her 8-year-old sister is frozen in time, doesn't know what to say. She tells her little sister to book it, to run out of the house and go get help. And she's fighting him off of her, like she's pushing him as hard as she can. Now, mind you, she's 12 years old. She can't do much. She's pushing him off of her as he's undressing her. She just says, get off of me, as loud as she can. And all of a sudden, she says that he flew right off of her. Flew off of her like as if something just grabbed him and yanked him across the room. And that's when she heard it, the many voices, speaking a language that wasn't Spanish, echoing throughout the room. She said that she couldn't pinpoint where the voices were coming from, but she felt surrounded by them. And as she looked over where her godfather had been literally thrown to against the wall, she could see the fear fall upon his face. And that's when she ran for the door. States that she never told her parents what her godfather attempted to do to her, and she made her sister promise never to tell a soul. However, she believes that she didn't really have to, because right after that situation happened, her godfather kind of went crazy because he couldn't sleep anymore. He kept talking about being taunted by spirits or entities of the unknown, and those were her ancestors protecting her. Now, what do you guys think that was? Do you guys think it was her ancestors protecting her, or do you think that was something else?
Do you guys believe in haunted dolls? Because somebody from Jamaica just submitted this spooky story. We're gonna call the person who submitted the story Marianne. That's very Jamaican. So Marianne says that she's from Jamaica but currently lives in the US. A little backstory, Marianne's dad's mother thought that she was a jacket. Jacket meaning that she wasn't actually his kid. So Marianne's dad brought her to America when she was around 7. After his divorce, Marianne went to go live with her grandmother, the one that doesn't believe that she's her son's daughter. Marianne says that her grandmother never took care of her correctly. She always treated her very, very badly growing up. Things like not buying her clothes or shoes, not doing her hair. She would get a lot of whoopings because her grandmother believed that she was bad on purpose. However, Marianne was only doing those things because, trigger warning, because she was actually being SA'd and her grandmother allowed it. Marianne really wanted to go back to her mother. So like I mentioned earlier, her grandmother never bought her anything. So one Christmas, she bought her a life-size Walk With Me doll that had her complexion and hair color. Marianne was so happy for the gift. She played with that doll every day until one evening. After dinner, she was headed upstairs. Now, the stairwell was always dark. It's on the side of the house that has no windows or doors. So as Marianne is walking up the stairs and got to the top, she notices something in the dark. Mind you, she was playing with the doll, but every day when it came to dinner time, she would throw the doll under her bunk bed. So can y'all tell me why the doll was standing upright in the dark, reaching its hands out to Marianne? And of course, being a child, Marianne picked up the doll, put it away, and continued on with her life. The same thing kept happening. So much so that Marianne made it her business to turn on the lights in the stairwell at night before she went upstairs, but every time the doll was standing in the hallway. So it's summertime and Marianne is excited because she's going to Jamaica. I want to go to Jamaica, sorry. Now Marianne says don't judge her, but she thought that it would be the perfect opportunity to get rid of this doll by gifting it to her little sister in Jamaica. So she bought the doll with her. She gave the doll to her little sister. Trip is over. She flies back to the States. Fast forward to her next trip to Jamaica. When she arrived, she noticed that the doll was no longer in the house. So she asked her mother, where's the doll? And her mother said that she burnt the doll outside. So she asked her mother why. Her mother said that she came home on multiple occasions, saw the doll standing up in her living room with its hands out. So she burnt it. She said the first time it happened, she thought that her little sister left it out, but it kept happening. Now her mother runs a very strict Caribbean style program, and her mom ran a very strict Caribbean style program when it came to keeping her house clean. So she knew where everything was. So she knew it wasn't her little sister leaving the doll out like that. So she burnt the doll. What would you do if you were going through something like this? Your favorite Haitian homegirl.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Per usual, the necklace. If I'm not wearing it every day, it's because I forgot to put it on. Otherwise, I wear it every day. It's cute. It's down here if you want. If you don't already follow me on my backup account, please follow me. I'm trying to save up for a car. Any income that I generate off of that account is going towards that. And I don't want to say I'm desperate, but your girl's desperate. Thanks. Also, thank you for 500,000 followers. I can't believe we got here. Now onto the story. I've been a long-time viewer and I lived in a very haunted house in Atlanta, Georgia. My whole family has multiple experience, but this one is our scariest. Let me start out by saying that we believe that this is the house where my father was possessed by something very dark because he became extremely mentally, emotionally, and physically abusive, especially towards my mother and I. My brother was a lot bigger than him, so he mainly mentally and emotionally abused him. We only lived here for about 8 to 10 months. My brother and I always experienced our bed shaking at night. Those scenes from the movies used to terrify me, and I have been so scared that that was going to happen to me. And heard footsteps in the attic above us to the point that he would wake me up to go look with him and make sure nothing was up there. Go by your fucking self, Sherlock Holmes. I didn't sign up for that. If you wanna, that's on you. Brave of him to think that I'd go with him. We had a guest room that always gave us the creeps, so we kept the door closed at all times. Also note, this door had the hinges that made it so it couldn't be propped open. It would close automatically. One night my brother went out of his room to go to the bathroom, which is right next to the creepy guest room. Next thing I know, he's waking me and my mom up screaming bloody murder. I open my door and immediately make eye contact with something holding the door cracked open. Not eye contact. Oh, you're never supposed to look it in the eyes. My mom said my brother and I clearly blacked out from fear because we kept screaming and it took us a long time to calm down. Yeah, Mom, it would you too. My brother doesn't remember any of it and I only remember seeing the figure holding the door cracked open. To this day, I still get sick to my stomach thinking about it. I have plenty more stories from that house. So let's say part 1 of the Atlanta haunting. We love a good multiple part series. Making eye contact with it does it for me. That does it for me. Anyway, rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. Don't forget to follow my backup account. Thank you again for 500,000 of you. I'll see you all the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
I think my dream keeps showing me where someone died. I'm American and I've always lived in a city right by Lake Erie. I've never gone out of the US, especially not to a school outside the US, and this is the second time I've had this dream. The dream starts with me, around 20 years old, sitting and flipping through a school yearbook from a school I never went to in real life. Nothing about that felt weird at first. Then I stopped on 2 boys. They were brothers, both blonde, blue-eyed. I knew immediately that I knew them, even though I couldn't remember their names. I never can. The names felt German, but not in an obvious way, maybe softer. Looking at their photos reminded me of being in gym class with them. I remember the gym itself more than anything. The echo, the open space, that generic school smell. They were always quiet. I don't remember them talking much. I couldn't tell if they didn't speak English very well or if I didn't speak German. That stood out to me. Then I remembered something else. I remembered that they both went missing. I remembered the local news coverage like it had actually happened. One brother had gone to a park by himself. The park had a swamp tucked deeper into the woods, not right near the entrance. According to the news, he either tried to swim or fell in and drowned. They didn't think there was any foul play and basically closed the case. Around the same time, the other brother went missing too. He was never found. After that realization, I shut the yearbook and felt this really strong urge to go to that park. Not curiosity, compulsion. Like something unfinished was tugging at me. That same day, I went there with my boyfriend on a moped. That part felt strange. I'd never ridden one before and don't really see them where I live. On the way there, I noticed road signs that looked like English letters but weren't quite right and not actually English. It made me feel like I wasn't in the US. When we got there, I felt off. Not scared, just uneasy. Like I didn't belong there, but also like I had been there before. We walked pretty far into the woods and eventually came across the lake. At first glance, it looked normal. Dark water, tall grass around the edges, trees everywhere. But once we stopped, I noticed how quiet it was. No birds, no bugs, no frogs, nothing. The only animal I saw was a large, black, pig-looking thing off to the side. I didn't think much of it at the time. Later I realised it was a wild boar, but in the dream it didn't register as strange. We don't have them where I live. For some reason, we decided to swim. We didn't change clothes or talk about it, we just went in. I don't remember the water feeling good or bad, it was just there. While swimming, I noticed a small island near the edge of the lake. It wasn't fully separate from the shore, more like a raised patch of land. On it was a thick cluster of purple flowers. They were the only things around that looked lively and colourful. For a few seconds, I grew increasingly teary-eyed and my gut super unsettled. There was something wrong. Why was the gorgeous and nutrient-dense terrain here? Right here and nowhere else around the lake, not even in the grasslands around it. My boyfriend told me we should leave. His voice was shaken. I knew he was right, but I couldn't stop looking at the island. And then I said, without planning to, that boy's body was here.
Oh.
He again, clearly more shaken, said that we needed to go. We grabbed our stuff and left quickly. He held my wrist as we ran through the woods. On the way back, I glanced over my shoulder and saw a guy standing between the trees. He was blonde, blue-eyed, and looked about my age. He looked like he could have been the missing brother, just older. I couldn't tell if he was real or not. I was too scared to say anything. We just kept going. Once we got back to the entrance, I went into a public bathroom. My head rushed with questions. Why am I here? What actually happened to that boy? Was that his brother? Is he alive? Then I woke up. When I woke up, I sat in what felt like unfinished business. I want to research this, but I'm almost too scared to, and I don't know what to do. This is the second time I've had this dream. If there is like a missing case of like two boys in Germany, what if she's found the spot
Berries.
where they are? Yeah. It's not beyond the pale that people have these like precognitive dreams.
Or
Yeah,
what if she was one of the boys and now she's reincarnated?
Good thought.
What if that happens when we're like, I just have a feeling about this. It's because that used to be you.
She was a little German boy
Yeah.
who's now stuck on the island.
Let's talk about something scary before I go to bed. And yes, the lights are staying on. So if you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I normally do not look like this. And by this, I mean I usually don't have a towel in my robe on. But after I got out of the shower, the exact thing that I was going to make a video on, like before I even got in the shower, happened. Again, if that's not a sign to make a video about this, I don't know what it is. And if you're not new here, then you know that I live in a semi-haunted house. Semi-haunted being that the activity is not consistent and it happens randomly. It's been happening randomly for years. Pretty much everybody in my house has experienced it, and everyone recognizes that it is here. I thought that it was, you know, just a phase, because it hasn't happened in a long time. But I had a new fan installed in my room, and this is important to the story, but it came with this remote. And you may notice something about this remote. The fan and the light, two separate buttons, Tell me why. I've never had a problem with this since it's been installed, and it's been months. I'm laying in bed on Monday night, and all of a sudden, like, I am drifting off into dreamland. The light turns on and the fan turns on. Something incredibly important to note is that the fan and the light do not correspond with each other. They are not programmed together, so that means that you have to click the fan and the light button separately to turn both on. Here's the weirder part. It then shuts off. Like, it turning on would have been one thing. The fact that it turned on, turned the fan on, and then turned both off simultaneously, immediately no. And I never really cuss on here, like, ever, but it scared the shit out of me. And as I was getting out of the shower, I made sure to leave the light on because one thing about me, I do not like a dark room. It just freaks me out. I don't like it. I come in and the fan is on full blast, which means somebody would have had to click this button 3 times. So I don't know what's going on, but I don't like it. I don't like that it's in my room either.
Have you ever had a weird experience at Buc-ee's? Now, there was this man named Alex. Alex said one summer he got a job at Buc-ee's, and he worked there for about 6 months until one night he had a very creepy experience. So he said he went in for his normal night shift, and he could tell when he got there it was going to be a pretty slow night. So after about 15-20 minutes after the start of his shift, he found himself behind the counter checking in inventory. So that's when he noticed this guy walk in. He had this button-up shirt with this big beaded necklace, these blue jeans, and this long black hair. And he said something about this guy seemed off, and he got the feeling like he might try and do something. So he kept a close eye on him. He said this guy just walked over into the corner of the store, and he turned and he started to stare at Alex. And Alex, after 5 minutes, he looks over, he sees this guy still staring at him. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. So for 20 minutes, this guy just sat there staring at him. And then he turned and just walked out of the store. A little bit later after this, he goes and he takes his break. And he said he got a phone call from his friend that he hadn't heard from in years. He said this friend was Native American. He was very spiritual. And so he picks up the phone call. And his friend's like, hey, Alex, like, this is going to sound really weird, but I had sort of this premonition, this vision. And I feel like I'm supposed to tell you, run away. Just remember that. Run away. And Alex is like, okay, I have to get back to work. So he hangs up and he goes back to work. After a couple hours, he finds himself by the front window sweeping. And this big storm had came on. And as he's looking out the window, he sees a flash of lightning. And as it illuminates the parking lot, he sees this wolf, dog-like animal, running right in front of the store. It looked like it had mange. It had this thick brown fur, and it looked in pretty bad shape. And he said the lightning flashed again, and he looked back out there, and it was gone. So his boss comes up to him and says, hey, I need you to go and take out all the garbage. So he takes all the bags of garbage and he throws it in this container, and he starts going out of the store. As he gets to the side of the store, he begins to hear shuffling sounds. And so he grabs his flashlight, and as he turns around to the back side of the store, right there's the dumpster, he sees something digging out of the garbage. And as he gets a closer look and he shines the light on this thing, said it was a man with no shirt, no pants, but his face looked like a dog. And he said that's when this thing turned and it said, Alex, Alex. And instantly his jaw dropped. He turned and he remembered what his friend had told him. and he just ran away. And he ran all the way to his car, jumped in, and he left, and he quit that night. He said a couple days later, he heard in the news that someone at that Buc-ee's disappeared. And he always felt like his friend was giving him a warning because that could have been. In San Francisco, there is this haunted Safeway. It is located downtown on Terrible Street. But a lot of people who've worked there or shopped there have reported very strange experiences. People often say they've seen the ghost of this young boy who is wearing these bib overalls, dressed from perhaps the 1930s. And the terrifying feature that they often talk about is that he doesn't have any eyes. A lot of people attribute the haunting of this Safeway to the fact of the Great San Francisco earthquake and fire. Now, there was an employee who worked there for a few years, and she said she often would get the feeling of being watched, and she would find herself walking down the aisles, and it would feel like someone was behind her, but when she would turn around, no one would be there. So she said one night she sees this man, and he was just kind of wandering through the store, going down aisle from aisle. And she said he looked very out of place. He looked old-timey. And so she follows this man to see if he's all right. And as she's following him, he leads her down all the way to the back room. And he goes inside the doors and kind of disappears in the back. So she's like, no one's supposed to be back there. Like, what is this guy up to? So she goes through the doors. She said she walked through the back room, and all of a sudden she sees this man turned around. She said he kind of had his shoulders together, and he was kind of moving from left to right. And he said he turned around, and he kept saying to her, like, help me, I don't know what's going on. Please, I'm lost, help me, like, I don't know what's going on. And he pleaded over and over again. She runs out, terrified, and just leaves the store. And she never returned. There was also another strange experience with another former employee who said one morning they had got to the store and they had first opened up. And they had found a set of very small footprints that were muddy, leading from one of the aisles all the way into the back. They said it looked like a child's footprint. It wasn't there the night before. They checked the security cameras and they don't see anyone. So they have no clue how those footprints got there. So what do you think? Is the Safeway in San Francisco haunted? This invisible line that sits 37 degrees north of the equator, and it essentially divides the United States into the north and the south. Now, the thing about this imaginary line is the places that it runs through. It is known as the Haunted Highway because this line goes through Area 51, right? It goes through Roswell. It goes through the Four Corners region, which has been synonymous with skinwalker sightings. It cuts through the Ozarks, right, which is an epicenter for paranormal activity. It goes through Monmouth Cave, right, which is known to possibly be this subterranean city that exists in these caves that span thousands of miles. Now, it also cuts through the heart of the Appalachia and into Washington, D.C. Now, the eerie thing about this is if you look at all of these UFO sightings, these major events that have happened along this line, it also passes through the New Madrid Fault Line. And I've started to notice a lot of these places in the north, or in the Four Corners region, where they are seeing these skinwalkers. They are seeing them in the same place in the Appalachian Mountains along the 37th parallel. Now, some people believe this is some type of metaphysical type of ley line, or possibly a tear between dimensions of space and time, and that this attracts sort of these interdimensional beings or evil or negative energy. Now, this is a story that I heard that takes place along the 37th parallel. There was this man named Chuck. Chuck said one night he was driving from Roanoke to Knoxville, Tennessee. He said he was on Interstate 81. It was like 10:05 at night, and it was a completely clear sky. He said as he's driving in his car, he all of a sudden started to feel kind of weird. And he said he almost like went into this daze. Well, he pulls off the interstate and he starts driving down this back highway. Then he gets off onto this dirt road. And eventually he finds himself in the middle of the woods driving down this dirt road high up in the Appalachian Mountains. And he starts to think, like, what is going on? Like, how did I end up here? Like, what made me get off the interstate and drive out into the middle of the woods? So he stops his car and he finally gets a hold of himself. And he's like, all right, how do I get out of here? Like, where do I need to go to get back on the interstate? As he's sitting outside of the car, he notices it's completely quiet. There's no bugs, insects, no sounds of the summer, like nothing. It is quiet. When all of a sudden he hears like this music, and it was coming from the woods. And it was just very soft and very faint, but he could hear it. And he's like, there is nothing around here. Like, where is that music coming from? And that's when he felt like there was a presence in front of him. And he said it felt very large. It felt evil and it felt menacing. He could not see it. He couldn't see anything but the woods, but he could feel something was standing behind the car next to him. So he slowly gets in his car, he closes the door, and he locks it. That's when he started to feel vibrations in his car, like something was, stepping really hard right behind him, something big. So he proceeds to start his car up and drive down this road. When he looks in his rear view mirror, he could see something was following him, even though like he couldn't physically see it. It was like he could feel something was chasing him. So he starts speeding and he's going as fast as he can down this dirt road. That's when all of a sudden his radio turns on by itself and it starts playing the same song that he hears out in the woods. So he's freaking out now, like, I need to get off this road, like something's going on. He tries turning off the radio, the music won't stop playing. And that's when he looks in his rearview mirror again, and he could see the outline of something very large, probably 9 to 10 feet tall, moving behind his vehicle. And he said the next thing he knew, he looked forward, and he found himself 90 miles away, now in Knoxville, Tennessee, about 5 blocks away from his home, sitting in his car. And he still to this day has no idea what happened to him outside of the fact he was driving on the 37th. This invisible line that sits 37 degrees north of the equator, and it essentially divides the United States into the north and the south. Now, the thing about this imaginary line is the places that it runs through. It is known as the Haunted Highway because this line goes through Area 51, right? It goes through Roswell. It goes through the Four Corners region, which has been synonymous with skinwalker sightings. It cuts through the Ozarks, right, which is an epicenter for paranormal activity. It goes through Monmouth Cave, right, which is known to possibly be this subterranean city that exists in these caves that span thousands of miles. Now, it also cuts through the heart of the Appalachia and into Washington, D.C. Now, the eerie thing about this is if you look at all of these UFO sightings, these major events that have happened along this line, it also passes through the New Madrid fault line. And I've started to notice a lot of these places in the north, or in the Four Corners region, where they are seeing these skinwalkers. They are seeing them in the same place in the Appalachian Mountains along the 37th parallel. Now, some people believe this is some type of metaphysical type of ley line, or possibly a tear between dimensions of space and time, and that this attracts sort of these interdimensional beings or evil or negative energy. Now, this is a story that I heard that takes place along the 37th parallel. There was this man named Chuck. Chuck said one night he was driving from Roanoke to Knoxville, Tennessee. He said he was on Interstate 81. It was like 10:05 at night, and it was a completely clear sky. He said as he's driving in his car, he all of a sudden started to feel kind of weird. And he said he almost like went into this daze. Well, he pulls off the interstate and he starts driving down this back highway. Then he gets off onto this dirt road, and eventually he finds himself in the middle of the woods driving down this dirt road high up in the Appalachian Mountains. And he starts to think, like, what is going on? Like, how did I end up here? Like, what made me get off the interstate and drive out into the middle of the woods? So he stops his car and he finally gets a hold of himself. And he's like, all right, how do I get out of here? Like, where do I need to go to get back on the interstate? As he's sitting outside of the car, he notices it's completely quiet. There's no bugs, insects, no sounds of the summer, like nothing. It is quiet. When all of a sudden he hears do 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 do, like this music, and it was coming from the woods, and it was just very soft and very faint, but he could hear it. And he's like, there is nothing around here. Like, where is that music coming from? And that's when he felt like there was a presence in front of him. And he said it felt very large, it felt evil, and it felt menacing. He could not see it, he couldn't see anything but the woods, but he could feel something was standing behind the car next to him. So he slowly gets in his car, he closes the door, and he locks it. That's when he started to feel vibrations in his car, like something was, stepping really hard right behind him, something big. So he proceeds to start his car up and drive down this road. When he looks in his rear view mirror, he could see something was following him. Even though, like, he couldn't physically see it, it was like he could feel something was chasing him. So he starts speeding, and he's going as fast as he can down this dirt road. That's when all of a sudden his radio turns on by itself, and it starts playing the same song that he hears out in the woods. So he's freaking out now, like, I need to get off this road, like something's going on. He tries turning off the radio, the music won't stop playing. And that's when he looks in his rearview mirror again, and he could see the outline of something very large, probably 9 to 10 feet tall, moving behind his vehicle. And he said the next thing he knew, he looked forward, and he found himself 90 miles away, now in Knoxville, Tennessee, about 5 blocks away from his home, sitting in his car. And he still to this day has no idea what happened to him, outside of the fact he was driving on the 37th. You're probably familiar with the term 6-7, because it has become this popular trend amongst the younger generation. But a lot of people don't realize that 6-7 has been often associated with paranormal encounters. Now, there was a woman named Molly. Molly said that her son picked up the trend of saying 6-7, and he would say 6-7 after everything. And eventually it got to the point where she was annoyed. So she tells her son, you can say it at school, you can say it around your friends, but I do not want to hear you say it around me. So she goes home one day, and she is sitting in the living room. She started to hear her son saying 6-7, 6-7, 6-7. So she got up, she walked into her son's room, and she said, what's going on? Like, I told you not to say that number anymore. Like, it's annoying, please stop. And her son's like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I did not say that. She's like, okay, whatever, just don't say it anymore. A couple days later, she is sitting in the living room again, and she sees a shadow go by. And she starts hearing 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 6-7 over and over again. So she gets up, she goes to her son's room, and she's like, I told you, stop saying that. Like, it's annoying, please stop. And once again, her son pleads with her, like, I did not say that. So it keeps happening over and over again. And this one particular day, she comes home from work, she goes into the kitchen, and on the refrigerator, there are these letter magnets. And she discovers that spelled out on the fridge with these magnets is 6-7-DIE. So she runs into her son's room immediately, and she's like, okay, this has got to stop. Like, it is getting crazy. Like, you need to stop saying this word and, like, stop messing around because it's not funny. And once again, he says, Mom, I promise you I am not doing this. So she grounds him. Later that night, she's in bed, and she turns over, and she looks out at the doorway. She sees her son standing in the doorway, and he's just staring at her. And she's like, okay, yeah, can I help you? And he turns around, walks down the hallway. So the next morning, she asks her son, what did you want? Why did you come to my room? And he's like, Mom, like, I didn't do that. Like, that, I don't know what you're talking about. A couple weeks after this, she is in the kitchen, and all of a sudden, her son comes through the kitchen door, stands right by her, and he looks at her. But that's when she realizes, like, her son looks completely different. Like, something is off about him. And that's when he starts to say 6-7, 6-7, 6-7, 676767. And his voice got deeper and deeper and sort of darker as he said that. And she starts screaming because she's terrified. She knows this isn't her son. Her son comes running out of his bedroom into the kitchen. She grabs him, embraces him, and is like, look, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to yell at you. And I know that it wasn't you saying that number. So she tells him like what had happened. And they both agreed that that number would never be mentioned again in their house.
I went on a solo trip to Maine, and I know for a fact I brought something back with me that I wasn't supposed to. I took a solo trip to Maine last October. It was nothing crazy, I just needed a little bit of a break. And so I booked an Airbnb. It was close to the coastline. It was definitely quiet, a little bit isolated, but nothing too bad. I mean, you could just take a little drive and you would be into town. The host mentioned that there was a trail behind the house that a lot of visitors would go and visit, and it would lead up to a couple of cliffs, so I thought, why not? So I went on this trail, and at first everything was fine. It was a pretty view. But the further I got, I noticed the quieter it got out there. It was unnaturally quiet. There was no birds, no bugs, no wind. I figured maybe it was just the time of day, and then I noticed that there was a figure standing partially off the trail, kind of in the trees, and it was a person. I could tell it was an older person. I couldn't see the face super clear, but the way they were standing in their posture looked like an older woman, possibly. I almost went to go turn around, but then she started to speak and she said, "You're off the usual path." Now, her voice was very calm. It wasn't threatening at all, so I just kind of stayed there for a sec. I just kind of smiled and I said, "Oh, I'm just exploring," and she stepped a little closer, not quite on the path, and she said, "Just be careful what you take back with you." I didn't really know how to respond with that, so I just kind of looked at her with like a nervous smile. And then she reached into her pocket and she handed me like a small little jar. She told me to take it, and she said that people like to take things from here. And I didn't want to take it, but I didn't want to be rude either, so I took it. It didn't seem dangerous, it just seemed kind of odd, and the substance inside of the jar, it was dark. It kind of looked like dirt, but it was clumped together and a little more wet than that. After I took it, she said, "Okay, you'll be fine," and then she just turned around and left. She didn't even say goodbye. I decided I did not want to carry on with this walk, so I turned around and went back home. The rest of the day was pretty normal, and then it got to that night, and that's when things started to feel a little weird. I noticed that there was this ongoing tapping noise on my window. I looked out the window. I didn't see a branch. I didn't see anything, but it was just tapping. And I barely slept that night, honestly. And then the next day, I was packing up to leave, and I remembered that I left the little jar that the lady gave me in my car outside. And so I went to go get it because I knew it was in the little cup holder, and I walked out to the kitchen, and it was on the counter. I just kind of figured maybe it was some muscle memory, and I just grabbed it out of my car and put it on the kitchen counter. I didn't think much of it. I took it, put it back in my car, packed all my stuff up, I went home. Once I got home, I noticed that the little jar was in my bag. I didn't put it in my bag, I put it in my car. So this is the point where I started to feel a little nervous and super weird about this whole thing. I remember looking up the area out of curiosity, and there wasn't anything super crazy, just there was a couple people who posted saying to not accept anything from people offering things on the trail. Not because it's dangerous, but it's not meant to leave. I don't know what that means, but I will say a couple of days ago I threw the jar out, and then the tapping on my window started up again.
One afternoon in early September of 2004, 20-year-old Derek Keeper sat at a desk in the newspaper lab at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, furiously typing on one of the school's desktop computers. The lab that Derek was in was the hub of the university's school paper, the Daily Nebraskan. So there were some other students who were in the space that were talking or working at other computers. But Derek didn't notice any of them. He was completely locked in on what he was doing and writing as fast as he could. Because after he was done with the article that he was working on, he had a ton of other responsibilities that he needed to tackle. So Derek was involved in a lot of stuff at school. He was in a fraternity, he was a senator in the student government, he was a research assistant for the library, and he was pursuing 5 different majors. And Derek took all of his various commitments very, very seriously. But the column he was currently writing was really the one he had the most fun with. So Derek was from a small city in Nebraska, And even though he'd always been, personally a very loud and opinionated person, he'd never had a real platform for talking about all the ideas and points of views that he had. And so this column really gave him the opportunity to finally, actually present these big ideas to the students at school, and he hoped would likely provoke lively discussions around campus about his ideas. After all, Derek loved a good debate, and so he would intentionally choose to write about really complex issues that would get his readers fired up, like the ongoing war in Iraq and the future of the Republican Party and all the things that were wrong with local politics. The tone he went for when he wrote and talked about these kind of, contentious things was often very sarcastic, very blunt, and provocative. I mean, he really thrived on creating discourse and getting people to passionately disagree with him. And they usually definitely did, to the point where some even would get very mad with him. A lot of times the paper's readers would write furious letters or even send hate mail about what Derek had written. But Derek was really not bothered by that at all. In some ways, that was his aim, to get people all riled up. And he was sure that the article he was writing right now was going to be even more divisive than really anything else he had written. For Derek, though, really for him, it was all about individual freedoms and encouraging people to say no to government overreach in their daily lives. I mean, that really was sort of his general stance on everything. That's really what inspired him to do any of this in the first place. In fact, this particular column that Derek was writing was about how he was advocating for abolishing a set of state and federal laws that were trying to control personal choice and the right to decide what was best for one's body, and he was against it. Now, to be clear, the stakes for this issue were life and death. I mean, literally. But Derek believed that the fundamental freedom of being an American was the right to make your own decisions, even if it meant risking your own personal safety. And so as Derek sort of furiously typed away, he was encouraging everyone, like senators and politicians, everybody, to have the same kind of intensity that he had about this issue, to be just fully bought in on this idea of, as Americans, we need individual freedom. And then finally, when he was all done typing, Derek sat back and proofread the whole thing, and when he got to the last line, he got chills. It said, quote, "I just wish we could keep the government out of our pocketbooks and out of our personal decisions." Derek loved that line, and so he nodded, satisfied with his work. He had nailed it. Then he emailed his draft to his editor with a big smile on his face. Derek's article went to print just a few days later, on September 17th. And like most of Derek's other articles, this one for sure got a lot of angry emails and letters from people who disagreed with what Derek had to say. But all the vitriol in these messages just proved to Derek that his article had clearly been a success. He had sparked outrage and got people talking about this issue. Derek even hoped that maybe some of the readers got angry enough to actually take action. That's what he wanted. He wanted his writing to genuinely inspire. The rest of Derek's semester was a total blur. He kept writing his weekly column on top of all of his other obligations and exams and everything else, and before he knew it, the semester was over, and he was headed to his mother's house in Texas for Christmas break. A few weeks later, on January 4th, 2005, at 3 a.m., Derek rode in the back seat of a Ford Explorer SUV on his way back to school after the break. He'd caught a ride from his mother's home in Texas with two of his fraternity brothers who were sitting up front. And Derek had spent the first part of this just awful 13-hour-long drive doing what he did best, using his sarcasm to make his friends laugh, and he was also engaging them in really animated conversations. And so, the first 6 to 8 hours had sort of flown by. But now, it's basically the middle of the night still, / very early morning, and everybody had just gone quiet because they were all exhausted from this truly awful, long drive. All any of them wanted to do at this point was just get back to campus and be done. And eventually, Derek and his friends were very close to campus. They were finally in Nebraska, and they were driving down Interstate 80, which was a snowy, cold highway not far from the school. And Derek was really excited to start the new semester. He'd had a nice, laid-back holiday where he'd caught up on sleep and spent a lot of time just kind of hanging out and seeing his younger siblings. But Derek just was not the kind of person who liked slowing down for very long. And so he was quite eager to get back to his busy life on campus. Especially, he really wanted to get back to his column. He had had a lot of downtime and was able to, brainstorm and come up with some good potential new topics for the column, but he really wasn't sure if any of those ideas were going to top, the very controversial article that he had published back in September. People were still talking about that one, and Derek was still thinking about it too. In fact, his own words and advice to his readers were still ringing in his ears and guiding his everyday decisions. But for now, Derek just leaned his head up against the cold glass window of the car and waited for this long trip to finally be over. But suddenly, he felt the SUV lurch. And before he knew what was happening, he heard a deafening bang and he heard his friends screaming. Just minutes later, a police officer was flying down Interstate 80 in his cruiser. Eventually, he spotted a group of ambulances parked on the side of the road, and he knew that's where he needed to go, so he pulled over to the side and stopped. And when he got out, he saw in a ditch just off the highway was an overturned SUV. The officer immediately jumped out of his cruiser and rushed towards the vehicle. And when he got there, he found the scene was just absolutely chaotic. There were a team of paramedics who were at the window of the SUV trying to assess the condition of the victims inside and to get them out. And when the officer kneeled down to look inside as well, he could clearly see two people inside the vehicle. Now, both of them seemed basically fine beyond, obviously being in a wreck. I mean, they were banged up and clearly dazed, but their injuries didn't look immediately life-threatening. So, sort of relieved, the officer backed away to let the paramedics do their thing. But very quickly, the officer noticed that more paramedics were actually running past the SUV to something on the ground a few feet beyond it. And so the officer followed them to go see what it was they were running to. And when he saw what was on the ground, the officer just kind of stopped and knew instinctively that there was nothing anybody could do. I mean, there was a body of a young man on the ground who clearly was a third passenger of this SUV, but their body was just mangled almost beyond recognition. It would turn out Derek had been right. His September 17th, highly contentious column in the Daily Nebraskan would be his most controversial and famous piece ever. And actually, people are still talking about it today. Because his column was about how, we, all us Americans, reserve the right to make our own choices about our bodies and personal safety. And Derek believed that there was a law that was actually directly infringing on that right, which was the law that was forcing people to wear a seatbelt. Derek despised this requirement. He thought seatbelts should be just a personal decision about safety. To him, it was not just about buckling up, it was about individual choice, about freedom. And on January 4th, that SUV that Derek was riding in going back to school, well, the driver hit some ice on the road and lost control. The driver and the other passenger in the front were wearing seatbelts. But Derek, in keeping with his beliefs, was not. And so when the SUV crashed and flipped over, Derek alone was killed. As one reporter pointed out, Derek lived by his beliefs, and he also died by them.
Want to get creeped out? I want to talk about the Dybbuk box. Have you ever heard of it? This one includes Post Malone. So in 2003, a really weird eBay listing popped up. The seller was a man named Kevin Manis. He was selling an old antique wine cabinet. Kevin goes into particular detail as to what havoc this antique wine cabinet has unleashed on his life. The first incident that happened was he had brought it to his furniture store. He had to go out to run some errands, and his cashier was working at the store. She called him. She was crying. She said someone broke into the store. They've been yelling. I haven't seen them, but they've been yelling. They've been smashing things, and they locked me in. He hurries back, goes inside. There's no one there that he can find. He finds light bulbs shattered in the basement, and it also smells strongly of cat piss.
Oh.
The cashier wound up quitting, and she never wanted to talk about what happened again. Fair. So he restores the wine cabinet. He winds up giving it to his mother late, and winds up actually giving it to her on Halloween. Within 5 minutes of her receiving the wine cabinet, she has a stroke. But he's not chalking this up to anything paranormal. During her recovery, she was able to communicate with hospital staff and family by pointing to letters on the alphabet because she couldn't speak at the time. Okay. So she used this to tell Kevin a message. And she spelled out the words hate gift. He thought this was funny. He was like, it's okay, Mom, I'll get you something else. Like, he wasn't being like, oh, she hates it because it's cursed. In the weeks that followed, Kevin winds up giving it to different people in his family. The first person is to his sister, and she gives it back to him within a week. She says the doors on the cabinet won't stay shut. Then it goes to his brother and sister-in-law, who returns it within a few days. His brother says it smells like jasmine flowers, and his wife says it smells like cat pee. The last person he gave it to was his girlfriend. She told him after 2 days that he should sell it. She didn't really say more than that. Kevin brought the box back to his furniture shop. It was purchased the next day. The next morning, he goes to open up the shop. The cabinet is on the front steps with a note attached that says, "This has a bad darkness." So he goes home with the cabinet, and this is when paranormal stuff starts to happen for him. He starts to experience a nightmare that he has all the time. Okay. Which is he is walking with a friend or a family member or someone that he trusts, and he's looking them in the eyes, and suddenly he realizes it's not the person he thinks he's with. This story gets so crazy.
Ever since I started my little series where I show you guys creepy pictures, you guys have also started to send me your own, and they are terrifying. So the background to this first one goes, it was a rainy day and I decided to go have a cigarette outside in the yard. Suddenly, I saw somebody looking at me in the house opposite me. However, nobody lives in that house. I thought it looked like a little girl. I started calling for her, but I never got a response and saw that she had no face. For some background on this second picture, this person says, I was already in bed, but I was thirsty, so I went to go get a drink and realized that my grandma and grandpa had gone to sleep, so I was alone downstairs. After getting my drink, I decided to take a picture in the mirror. If you zoom in closely, on the cupboard standing behind me, you can see a face in it, but there was nobody downstairs with me at the time that I took the picture.
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you'd like to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. When I was 6 years old, something started visiting me in my dreams. At first, I thought it was just a nightmare, but then one night, I woke up, and it was standing right next to my mom. This happened about 10 years ago, right after my family moved into a new house. At first, everything felt normal. New rooms, new routines, nothing out of the ordinary. But not long after we moved in, I started noticing something. Or someone. A girl. She always wore the same thing. A white dress. And I didn't just see her in one place. Sometimes she would show up in my dreams. Other times I wouldn't see her at all, but I could feel her. Like she was nearby, watching, waiting. And the feeling she gave me wasn't comforting. It wasn't friendly. Even at 6 years old, I could tell whatever she wasn't good. The dreams started happening more and more. At first, they were just quick glimpses. I could see her standing far away or watching me from a corner. But over time, she started getting closer, until eventually I was too scared to sleep in my own room. I started sleeping on the floor in my parents' bedroom, right next to their bed. It was the only place I felt even a little bit safe. And for a while that worked, until one night. That night is something I will never forget. I was dreaming again, and of course she was there. The girl in the white dress. This time she wasn't far away. She was standing right in front of me, completely still, just staring. Her face held no emotion, no anger, no sadness, nothing. It was just cold and empty, and then she spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it was very clear. I'm going to kill your mom and become your new mother. I remember the exact feeling that hit me in that moment. It was pure terror, and that's when I woke up. My eyes snapped open, and for a second I just lay there trying to process what I had just heard. I was still half asleep, still stuck in that fear, so I did what I always did. I got up to go closer to my mom, but the second I looked at the bed, I froze. Because lying right next to my mom was her, the girl in the white dress, exactly as I had just seen her in my dream. For a moment, my brain couldn't catch up. I didn't know if I was still dreaming or if I had somehow brought the dream with me, but it didn't feel like a dream. My body locked up and I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. All I could do was stand there and stare at her. at the way that she was lying so close to my mom, like she belonged there, like she had already taken her place, and somehow that wasn't the scariest part. I forced myself to move. Slowly, I reached out and shook my mom, trying to wake her up, and the second her eyes opened, the girl disappeared. Gone. Like she had never been there at all. My mom sat up immediately, and I could tell from her face that something wasn't right. Neither of us questioned it. We just grabbed blankets and went straight to the living room. Neither of us wanted to stay in that room. Neither of us felt safe, and we barely slept that night. I remember lying there wide awake, and I heard my mom crying quietly next to me. She didn't say anything. Not until the next morning. That's when she finally told me something that made everything so much worse. She said she had a dream, and in the dream was the same girl, the same white dress, and she had said the same exact words. At that point, I knew it wasn't just my imagination anymore, and it wasn't just a nightmare. Whatever I saw, she saw it too. And then I remembered something. This wasn't the first time I had seen her. Before we had even moved into that house, I had seen her at our old one. Back then, I used to hang out with my older siblings a lot, and sometimes we messed around with things we probably shouldn't have. One of those things was playing the Bloody Mary game, and we treated it like a game, like one big joke. But not long after that, the same girl started appearing to me. At first in dreams, and then around me. After that night, my family didn't take any chances. We had people from our church come over to pray and bless the house, every room, every corner, and after that, it stopped. The dreams, the feeling, the girl, everything. I never saw her again, never heard from her again. For years, it felt like it was finally over, until recently. I found myself online watching a video about Bloody Mary, and in the video, they showed a girl wearing a white dress. The moment I saw her, my entire body went cold, because they didn't just have similarities. It wasn't just a close resemblance. It looked exactly like her. The same girl I saw lying next to my mom when I was 6 years old.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
This hotel is cursed. There's been a lot of deaths in this hotel. People die of natural causes. They die of taking their own lives. People have been murdered here. There's also been people who have died from a strange bacterial infection that they picked up here. This place is not shy of the paranormal by any means. Hey, it's me, Mackenzie Marie, and today I am investigating the most haunted hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, the Luxor, famous for its black pyramid shape, huge sphinx, and the sky beam, which is the brightest beam of light in the world that can be seen from space. Over 1,100 tourists die visiting Las Vegas every year, and a large amount of those deaths are from either suicide or murder. One of the most iconic hotels on the Vegas Strip is said to be not only haunted, but also cursed. And it began right from the start in 1992 during the construction of the pyramid. Multiple workers fell and tragically lost their lives due to the complex angle and shape of the pyramid. The hotel's main lobby is one of the most prominent active spots in this hotel. Reportings have repeatedly said the Luxor was associated with people who died by jumping from the hotel's interior hallway balconies. And a lot of people have jumped. Some guests report hearing strange sounds, apparitions, and even feeling like someone is choking them while they're asleep. Could the Luxor, with its modern pyramid design, have opened something beyond this world?
I'm just going to articulate to you the information I'm getting. Pyramids are a very sacred shape, and when they aren't constructed with the understanding of their power and sacredness, they can be actually detrimental instead of a healing power. The pyramids that were built in Egypt, for example, were built with the understanding of what pyramid energy is about and is capable of, which is why when we visit a pyramid, there's almost a healing, and there's a otherworldly, higher consciousness affirmation and experience that can happen. Because this was not built with any of that in mind, and a complete disregard for sacred geometry, it set the tone for loss and destruction. It's a little hard for me to articulate what I'm being told, but basically, when you build something in a pyramid shape without the consciousness of what that energetic shape will do, it will actually start to feel like it's collapsing on you. So there's this sense of like this happening energetically. And for people who are already struggling emotionally, mentally, this is going to just magnify that. I'm being told it can cause people to do things they wouldn't normally do. It can inspire a rage in people that normally wouldn't carry that rage. As silly as this sounds, because a lot of people are intoxicated when they move through there, it numbs that actual experience. I wouldn't be surprised if you found that you talked to groups of people that stayed there and they had fights, or they had just disagreements, or it wasn't as much fun as they had anticipated or hoped for. But we see this happen all the time, where we are not, we don't take into regard nature, energy, and forces that are beyond the physical. And when we don't take those things into consideration, bad things can happen. Not always. And it's not punishment. It's not that there's a demon there. It's not that there is a presence that is punishing. It's not that. It's not being conscious of how energy works, how we can manipulate it, and how we can abuse it.
Want to get creeped out? I want to talk about the Dybbuk box. Have you ever heard of it? He starts to experience a nightmare that he has all the time. Okay. Which is he is walking with a friend or a family member or someone that he trusts, and he's looking them in the eyes, and suddenly he realizes it's not the person he thinks he's with.
Oh, I don't like that.
Yeah. The person then transforms into what he describes as a demonic looking hag that starts to viciously attack him. He starts waking up with bruises on his body, but still he's not associating this with the box.
Oh, God.
One night, Kevin has his sister, his brother, and his sister-in-law over, and they wind up spending the night. The next morning, they're having breakfast. His sister starts saying she had a weird nightmare. She explains the same nightmare that Kevin had. She says she's had this dream, this nightmare, multiple times before. All four of them are looking at each other like, what the fuck? Because they've all had the nightmare. So they start talking about it, come to realize that the only time that they've had the nightmare is when they've been sleeping in the same location as the box. Kevin ends up calling his girlfriend. He's like, hey, have you had any weird dreams lately? And she's like, yeah, actually. She explains the same nightmare. They're all having it. And she had it when she had the box in her house.
I have chills.
It's a creepy one.
It just got me.
Over the next few weeks, Kevin has people over. They're telling him that they're like seeing shadow figures in his house.
Jesus Christ.
He's starting to see that too. He starts to think that, okay, maybe this has something to do with the box.
It's about time.
Obviously. So he decides to put it outside in a storage shed. That night, he wakes up to his smoke alarm going off. There's no smoke. He's also smelling cat piss. He decides to bring the box back into his home because he's like, obviously, I pissed something off by putting it out in the shed. He brings it back into his house and he starts researching Dybbuks and Jewish folklore on his computer. He ends up passing out while he's doing this. That night again, he dreams of the demonic looking old hag that viciously attacks him. Then he woke up with the sensation that someone's breath was on his neck.
Oh.
He could smell jasmine flowers, and he saw a huge shadow lurking in his hallway. This is when Kevin decided enough was enough and listed the wine cabinet on eBay. This story gets so crazy.
To be so honest with you, I'm just having like a hard time processing this. So this man, a dad, walks into a police station and he says, I have a wife and 3 kids and they're all gone. I could not support them financially, so I got rid of all of them. Oh, and by the way, my son's body is inside of my car, parked right outside. Shankar Hangud was a husband to 46-year-old Jyoti Shankar and a father to 3 children, a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 13-year-old. The oldest one was starting his adult life. He was starting to think about what he wanted to do with his life. The middle one was in high school. The youngest one was in elementary school. Shankar worked in tech, and because of that, he would go from job to job, moving around different cities in the States with his family. And by the sounds of it, he was a contract worker, so it's not like he had one solidified job with a salary. He would be hired for different contracts, complete the job, then move on. So the family truly had no connections in the States. They were constantly moving, so creating long-lasting connections with neighbors or school friends, it wasn't really an option for them. And they really had no other family members in the States, so it was kind of just them, which, as you can imagine, did feel quite isolating at times. And Shankar was 1000% the kind of man that had a provider mindset. He felt like his duty to his family, his only duty, was to provide, to financially support them, and to work to give them the life that he wanted them to have. So when things slowed down at work and financial trouble came into the picture, it flipped his entire world upside down. And he started to think that if he couldn't give them the life that they wanted, then they couldn't live at all. The turning point in this story wasn't just losing one job, it was a pattern of losing contract after contract, each one leaving the family in a more vulnerable position than before. And on top of the financial issues, on top of the debt that he had fallen into, which was well over $100,000, Shankar claimed that he was also trying to work on a marriage that was falling apart. It sounds like trust between him and his wife really wasn't there. They didn't really speak to each other. It was that bad. His wife would sleep in the master bedroom and he would sleep in his youngest son's bedroom, and he felt like things got to a point in which there was no coming back from. The hole that he had dug himself into was way too deep. And by the looks of it, the decision that he came to on October of 2019 was one that had been brewing for a long time before then. And before we get into the horrific events of today's story, obviously the victims are not here to tell their own story. So what we know is from what Shankar told authorities happened and what they were able to piece together based on the crime scene evidence. Authorities believe that Shankar's crime spree took place over the course of a week. According to him, he sat down his kids on September 29th, a month prior, and said, "I have not been able to find a job. I cannot get a job. I cannot do this anymore, and I'm giving you guys a choice. Do you want to go to the afterlife with me and your mom, or do you want to stay here and try to live on your own?" His daughter and his youngest son were so scared and so sad. He described them as, quote, full of life, and said that they had so much to look forward to, so they wanted to choose to live. He told authorities that his youngest son said, quote, "No, Dad, please, I can survive. I'm good at studies. I want to finish this," end quote. His oldest son was also certain that he wanted to stay. He immediately turned to the internet to start researching about how much it would cost for him to live on his own, how much rent would cost, how much insurance would cost, how much groceries would cost. He didn't know at that point, obviously, because his parents had been providing for him, but he was willing to put in the work as long as he got a chance to live. He had been accepted into university, and he had been looking up different kind of paid internships that he could do to support not only himself but also his siblings. But the kids didn't really have a choice. Of course they didn't. Shankar had made up his mind. On top of that, they didn't really have time to figure out what to do. Because Shankar was so behind on finances, he had told his family that they were getting ready to be kicked out of their apartment on the 10th, and he told his kids that they did not stand a chance on their own because they were kids. They would lose the apartment, and then what? They would live on the streets and have to beg for money? Well, no, Shankar could not let that happen. On October 6th of 2019, the family had their last final dinner. Shankar bought dinner, and they all sat down at the table at their apartment. After dinner, according to Shankar, him and his wife agreed that she would be the first to go, and he would help her. He has said multiple times that this was a mutual agreement because he said that he was able to persuade his wife, the mother of his children, to exit. I don't know how true that is. I don't know how much I believe it, because this is a married couple who argued all the time or otherwise did not speak. It's hard for me to believe that he would tell her, "Hey, your time is over," and she would say, "Yeah, okay, help me out." But I don't know these people. It could have happened that way. It's also kind of unclear if it happened on the 6th after dinner or on the 7th. Shankar says that he has a hard time remembering because his brain blocked it out. But what he does remember is helping his wife tie a rope for her to use, and that is how she spent her last minutes here on Earth. The following day, on the 8th, he said he convinced his 16-year-old daughter to do the same with a rope. He said that he helped her until she was gone, and the following day, on the 9th, he helped his 13-year-old son do the same. He also says that his plan had been to tie the rope in the ceiling in the garage for it to happen there, but he realized that he wasn't tall enough to reach, so he had to go out and buy a ladder at Home Depot. Then he describes using a chair for his kids to help them get up there, and once they did, he says he kicked the chair out of the way. It is so incredibly sad to think about this, and if you believe what he is saying, that would mean that he lived around the house, around the bodies for days. On the 14th, he asked his only remaining living family member, his oldest son, to go on a drive with him. And somewhere between the couple of days in which they left the apartment to when Shankar arrived at the police station to turn himself in, he with rope, leaving Shankar to be the only person in his family still alive. He had said that he was supposed to go meet up with his family in the afterlife, but he couldn't because he realized this is wrong. So instead, he continued driving until he ended up at the police station. He tells them what he's turning himself into and then says, "My son's body is still in my car, parked right outside." Then he handed over his car keys. Mount Shasta police chief and another officer went outside to the car to verify that what Shankar was saying was true, because Varun's body was in the back seat of that car. This is a quote from the chief, quote, "These are things that do not just happen every day, and when they do, it is upsetting. I've been in the business a long time and I've seen a lot of unusual occurrences, just upsetting occurrences, but this one here is a whole new level." Shankar gave police officers the address to go find the other bodies, and they did. They found the 3 bodies that had been left in that state for days. Shankar initially pleaded not guilty in 2019, which is pretty insane to me, after he literally walked into the police station and confessed everything, and then he's gonna say, "No, wasn't me." Then on September 13th of 2021, nearly 2 years later, he eventually pled guilty to 3 counts of first-degree murder for his 3 children and 1 count of deliberately aiding his wife in. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, as well as an additional 2-year sentence to be served concurrently. It's so disturbing. That is all I have for today's video. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. Let me know what your thoughts are on this case. But yeah, hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of my uncle who refused to go to hospital even when he was sick, because he used to work at a hospital and he would see ghosts there. So yo, my uncle worked as a porter at this other hospital, and he would always tell us stories that he would see ghosts there or whatever. And also, he was somebody who struggled with cancer, but his cancer was not the one that needed him to go to hospital. It was only one time where he went to hospital when we found out that he had the cancer, because we thought it was something else, and then he started to lose weight, and then we had to take him to hospital, and you know, he didn't even stay there for that long, and he came back and he was like, "Next time this cancer comes back and it requires me to go to the hospital, let me die at home," because he's not going to the hospital, because he's like, ghosts at the hospital, when they see that, or demons, right, when they see that you are on your last breath, they take your last breath. I was like, what do you mean? Like, he's like, so he said that sometimes when you take somebody that's ill to the hospital and you find that that person was okay before, you know, you took them to the hospital and they got to the hospital and they just became worse, it's because of those ghosts. And he said, think of it like this. You know, when somebody dies on the street, like a car hits them and runs away and they never find the car or whatever, and the family also never comes to they take the body but don't take the person's spirit where the person died. Now, at that particular intersection, if that person is not resting in peace, they are going to stand there and they are going to kill more people. Do you get what I mean? He's like, this ghost that died there, right, will basically cause accidents, or a person that's walking, a passerby that's walking, especially the drunk ones, they will see this ghost and realize that it's a ghost and try to run away, and this ghost is going to chase you until a car is coming at high speed and push you in the streets and you're going to die. It sounds crazy, but that's what my uncle used to say. He's like, just like somebody that they take from home and they take to hospital, and all of a sudden that person does not go back home and they die at the hospital, and they tell their family members that they see ghosts, and obviously their family members don't take them seriously, you know, or sometimes they deem it as you're mentally ill, but you see ghosts when you're at the hospital, but when you're at home you do not see those ghosts. Do you understand what my uncle was trying to say? Now, obviously, we would listen to my uncle's stories every single day, and we thought this one was just a fib, you know, until one day, cancer got him, and it got him real bad. He was at home, and, you know, he was doing his chemos or whatever, and eventually, at some point, we were like, you know what, he's getting really worse, you know, we can't take him to chemo as an outpatient anymore, he needs to go to the hospital. We take my uncle to the hospital, and when he gets to the hospital now, he regains consciousness and he's a little bit better, and he's like, I'm better now, take me home. And we were like, no, like, you're not going nowhere. So, okay, he kept on saying we should take him home, whatever, and we were like, okay, fine, we will go to the doctor and we'll tell the doctors that you're refusing medication, la 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 la. And he was like, no, I'm not refusing medication, I just want to go home, I'll take the medication from home. And also, like, we didn't want to take care of my uncle, because like there are people at the hospital to do that, and it's not like you're really like on your deathbed that you need to be surrounded by family members. Do you understand what I mean? And so we were like, no. there's nobody that's gonna take care of you. And he was like, you know what, okay, fine. One day my uncle's like 3-year-old daughter was with me and his uncle, and my mom and his wife went to go get like food for all of us because my uncle wanted takeaways, and we're like, okay. So I'm with my uncle, we're talking or whatever, and my uncle's 3-year-old daughter's like, I see grandma. My uncle's mom died a couple of years back, I don't know when, but my uncle's daughter was like, I see grandma, and grandma is calling your name. And so we're like, what? And my uncle is like, you see? He started panicking, y'all. And he's like, you see what I mean? Like, these are the kind of things that I don't want. Like, now I'm scared. And I'm just like, it's not that deep. Because, and also like my uncle's daughter keeps on being like, grandma is right there. Like, he's calling your name. She's calling your name. And we're like, I felt like my uncle's daughter is playing games, because I asked her like, okay, but how does grandma look? And she couldn't answer me. So I was like, you see, she's just full of jokes. Like, but at the same time, it's like, why would a 3-year-old say something like that? But I was just like, hey, Yazim. We get in the car and it's time for us to leave. And my uncle keeps on video calling my aunt that day, just to check if they're okay. And he keeps on telling my aunt that I don't feel well, like I'm scared. And obviously I, guys, explained to my mother and my aunt and that, we were in the room, whatever, you guys went to go get food, and Miss Ma'am right here said that she saw grandma calling my uncle's name, and my mom was like, hey, maybe that's why he's scared, like we should go to a person and check it out. My uncle, guys, before we got home, video calls my aunt again and tells my aunt, come and get me out of this hospital, I don't feel like I'm going to make it tomorrow. And we felt like he was kind of being dramatic, and we tell him, let's go get a second opinion before we just take you out of hospital, and like whatever my daughter was seeing was something else. When I tell you, that particular day we went to sleep, we got woken up by a call at 3 a.m. and my aunt was wailing after that call. My aunt tells my mom that uncle has gotten worse, like really worse. They need to sign papers so that he can get surgery, and they're like, this is a life and death type of surgery. And I'm like, so he might have been right. So my mom tells my aunt, like, before you go to the hospital to sign these papers, let's go to somebody and ask what's happening, like a prophet or whatever. They go to this particular prophet. The prophet is like, I am trying to connect with your with your husband, but I can't. Do you understand? He's like, physically, I cannot see him anywhere here. You understand? Like, I can't feel him here. I can't feel his presence in the physical realm. I can't even feel his presence in the spiritual realm. So he's like, maybe we should go and find out what's happening at the doctor's and then come back again. But we need to come back with a piece of his clothing so that he can connect to my uncle and see what's going on. And I like the fact that this particular prophet didn't even lie to us and say, oh, he's going to be fine, just pay $250. Because he didn't even they did pay for consultation. But then after that, he was like, I don't even want to waste your time. I can't connect with him spiritually. If you guys feel, physically. So if you guys feel like you want to go take it further, go somewhere else. And so my aunt just started shaking. Right? We left that place, we went inside the car, and my aunt started shaking. So we're driving, she started to shake, and we're like, what's going on? Are you okay? She's like, no, I don't feel okay. Like, I feel a little bit lightheaded. Mind you, I am with my uncle's daughter in the car, and me, I'm there as well. And my other sibling, my other sister is also there. So we kind of like, what's going on? What's going on? They take her out. My mom and my other sister take her out, and they give her water, and they try to fan her, and she's like, she doesn't feel well. She feels like something is wrong. So we're like, alright, let's just go to the hospital. Maybe like it's in your head, because if your husband was really like terrible, they would have called us like, hey, hurry up, he needs the surgery now. Do you understand? Or they would have called and said he passed on, so don't be scared. And she just kept on like shaking, and we opened the window and she calmed down for a bit. When we got to the hospital, we got to my uncle's ward. My uncle was okay. He was not necessarily like yesterday where he was better, but he had his eyes open and he could speak, but slowly. Do you understand? So we get there, and me, my older sister, and my uncle's daughter are inside my uncle's ward, and my mom, my aunt go to the doctor's room, consultation room, and they talk to the doctor because that's where she needs to sign the papers. So now I'm holding my uncle's hand, trying to talk to him, because like I said, he was speaking very slowly, and as I'm holding the man's hand, it's kind of cold, man. The body temperature is kind of dropping slowly, because when I held it the first time, it was hot, and then it started dropping. And my uncle's daughter again looks outside the window. If you know the hospital, you know the hospital is like, there's like the hospital bed here, and then if you're next to the window is like a big window and there is no curtains. Some rooms, the one that he was in, there was no curtains. So my uncle is like, oh, my uncle's daughter is like, oh, there's grandma again, she's got a blanket. And I'm like, why does she have a blanket? She's like, I don't know. Like, she has a really big brown blanket, right? And we're like, hey, I'm thinking, hey, maybe I need to like, maybe I need to like be in the same room as my mom and aunt so that